Ambassador Kim Minho's hands trembled slightly as his shuttle approached the massive space station orbiting Nexus Prime. Through the viewport, he could see dozens of alien warships surrounding the diplomatic hub, vessels that could obliterate Earth's entire fleet without breaking formation. The Carneth dreadnoughts looked like floating fortresses covered in weapon arrays, while the crystalline Vorthak ships gleamed like deadly jewels against the starfield. "First time seeing the real Galactic military, sir?" asked his aide, Lieutenant Park Ji-hoon, trying to keep his voice steady. Minho nodded, watching a squadron of insectoid Zephyrian fighters perform impossible maneuvers around their mothership. "Intelligence reports don't do them justice. Each of those ships carries more firepower than our entire Pacific fleet." The shuttle docked with a gentle thud, and Minho straightened his black diplomatic uniform. 3 years of preparation had led to this moment, humanity's first formal request to join the Galactic Council. Earth's leaders had chosen him carefully, believing his calm demeanor and academic background would appeal to the supposedly civilized galactic community. How wrong they had been. The airlock hissed open, revealing a corridor lined with alien guards. Towering Carneth soldiers, their reptilian scales gleaming like armor, watched him with predatory eyes. Their plasma rifles hummed with barely contained energy. Between them stood crystalline Vorthak sentries, their bodies refracting the harsh, lighting into rainbow patterns that hurt to look at directly. "Move quickly, mammal," hissed one of the Carneth guards. "The council grows impatient." Minho's translator implant converted the alien speech, but it couldn't filter out the contempt in the creature's voice. Lieutenant Park fell into step behind him, both humans dwarfed by their alien escorts. The Grand Council chamber stretched before them like a vast amphitheater. Hundreds of alien delegates filled the terraced seating, representing dozens of species from across the galaxy. The air thrummed with the sound of different atmospheric processes working overtime to keep everyone breathing comfortably. Minho caught glimpses of beings he'd only seen in classified reports. The gas-breathing Nexari floating in their containment suits, the silicon-based Rockin delegates who looked like walking mountains, and stranger creatures that defied easy description. But it was the 3 major powers that dominated the chamber. The reptilian Carneth occupied the largest section, their battle-scarred warriors wearing ceremonial armor that displayed their military achievements. Across from them, the crystalline Vorthak delegates reflected the chamber's lights like living prisms, their forms both beautiful and intimidating. The insectoid Zephyrians filled the upper galleries, their compound eyes tracking every movement below, while their mandibles clicked in what Minho hoped was conversation rather than hunger. "Attention!" The chamber's automated systems translated the announcement into hundreds of languages simultaneously. "The Terran delegation approaches." The noise in the chamber didn't diminish. If anything, the chattering and hissing grew louder. Minho caught fragments of conversation through his translator, none of it flattering. Hairless apes, soft skin, weaklings, and another failed species seemed to be popular descriptions. Warchief Vorthak rose from his crystalline throne, his massive form catching and splitting the light into dazzling patterns. Standing nearly 3 meters tall, he was an impressive sight even by galactic standards. Battle scars etched his transparent surface, each one telling a story of conquest and victory. "So," his voice boomed through the chamber's speakers, "another species of mammals seeks to join our ranks." The word mammals dripped with disdain. "Tell us, small human, what worlds have you conquered? What empires have you crushed beneath your feet? What songs do your warriors sing as they march into battle?" Minho stepped forward, his polished boots clicking against the chamber's metal floor. The sound seemed ridiculously small in the vast space. "Honorable delegates," he began, his voice carrying clearly through the translation systems, "the Republic of Earth comes before you not as conquerors, but as partners. We seek mutual cooperation, cultural exchange, and peaceful coexistence among the stars." The reaction was immediate and devastating. Laughter erupted from every corner of the chamber, not the polite chuckling of diplomatic amusement, but raw, mocking laughter that cut through the air like a blade. The Carneth slapped their powerful tails against the floor in rhythmic mockery, creating a thunderous drumbeat that shook the chamber. The insectoid Zephyrian's mandibles clicked so rapidly it sounded like machine gun fire, while their compound eyes seemed to glitter with cruel amusement. Cooperation? Warchief Vorthak's laughter was like breaking glass. Cultural exchange? He gestured broadly to the assembled delegates. Every species in this chamber earned their place through strength, through conquest, through the sacred art of warfare. The Karneth have subjugated 17 star systems. The Zephyrians have harvested the resources of 3 different galaxies. Even the smallest members of our council have battle fleets that span sectors. The laughter continued, waves of it washing over Minho like a physical force. He felt Lieutenant Park shift nervously behind him, but held his ground. "We prefer diplomacy to warfare," Minho said firmly, raising his voice over the mockery. "Earth believes that civilization advances through cooperation, not conquest." If anything, this made the laughter worse. A massive Karneth general stood up, his scarred hide gleaming under the lights. "Diplomacy," he roared. "The cry of every weak species before they're consumed by their betters. Where are your battle scars, human? Where are your conquered territories? What songs do your warriors sing as they prepare for glorious combat? We have scientists, artists, philosophers," Minho began. "Weaklings." The shout came from multiple species at once, creating a cacophony that made Minho's translator implant whine with feedback. "Cowards hiding behind words." The council speaker, a towering Vorthak named Crystallis, struck his ceremonial staff against the floor. The crystal-on-metal impact rang like a bell, slowly bringing order to the chaos. His ancient form rose higher than even War Chief Vorthak, and when he spoke, his voice carried the weight of millennia. "The Galactic Council has reached its decision," Crystallis announced, his words echoing off the chamber's walls. "Humanity lacks the fundamental qualities required for full membership. You show no evidence of warrior culture, no proof of military might, no understanding of what it means to be strong in this galaxy." Minho felt his heart sink, but Crystallis wasn't finished. "Therefore, the Terran species shall be classified as a minor protectorate, a category reserved for primitive civilizations that may, given sufficient time and proper guidance, eventually develop the strength necessary for true membership. Perhaps, in a few millennia, when you have learned what it means to be warriors, we will reconsider your application." The chamber erupted in fresh laughter and approval. Alien delegates congratulated each other on putting the presumptuous humans in their place. Minho stood in the center of it all, feeling the weight of his species' first and perhaps only chance at galactic acceptance crumbling around him. As the session officially ended and the delegates began filing out, Minho remained standing at the podium. The sound of their continued mockery followed them through the corridors, leaving him alone with the crushing realization that Earth's peaceful approach had been not just rejected, but ridiculed. Lieutenant Park approached quietly. "Sir, the shuttle is ready for departure." Minho nodded slowly, straightening his uniform one final time. As they walked toward the exit, he couldn't shake the feeling that this humiliation was just the beginning of humanity's troubles in the wider galaxy. Dr. Park Ji-won rubbed her tired eyes as the artificial lights of Nexus Prime's Grand Archive flickered overhead. While Ambassador Kim was being humiliated in the council chambers 3 levels above, she had spent the last 18 hours buried deep in the station's massive digital library. The smell of recycled air and ozone from countless holographic displays filled the research wing, punctuated by the soft hum of quantum processors working around the clock. "Another cup of that horrible alien coffee?" asked her research assistant Lee Minjun as he approached her workstation, carrying 2 steaming cups of what the Vorthak called liquid energy, but tasted like burned metal. Ji-won accepted the cup gratefully, her hands shaking slightly from exhaustion and too much caffeine. "Thanks, I think I'm onto something here, but it's so strange I'm afraid to believe it." The holographic display in front of her showed 3 separate documents floating in midair, each one glowing with different colored text. Ancient symbols and musical notations danced across the translucent screens like digital ghosts. Around them, the archive stretched endlessly in all directions, a vast cavern filled with floating data crystals and quantum storage units that contained the collected knowledge of hundreds of civilizations. "Look at this," Ji-won whispered, manipulating the hologram with her hands. The Karnath war hymn Scales of Victory appeared larger, its musical notation flowing like liquid fire across the display. This song is over 50,000 years old. According to the metadata, it was used by Karnath warriors during their first conquest of the Andromeda sector. She gestured, and a second document materialized beside the first. Now look at this Vorthak battle chant called Crystal Storm. Completely different species, completely different part of the galaxy, completely different time period. But watch what happens when I overlay the rhythmic patterns. The two musical scores merged, and suddenly lines of perfect synchronization appeared between them. The mathematical progressions, the tempo changes, even the emotional crescendos matched with impossible precision. Minjun leaned forward, his reflection multiplying in the crystal surfaces around them. That can't be coincidence. It gets stranger. Jiwon's fingers danced across the holographic interface, calling up file after file. I've been cross-referencing military traditions across 47 different species. The Zephyrian ceremonial battle song, the Nexari warrior meditation chants, even the drumming patterns used by the silicon-based Rockin during their war dances, they all share fundamental structural elements. The archive around them hummed, with activity as quantum servers processed her requests. Robotic librarians floated past on anti-grav platforms, their mechanical arms sorting through physical artifacts that couldn't be digitized. One paused near their workstation, its optical sensors scanning their research with mechanical curiosity before continuing on its predetermined route. "Dr. Park," Minjun said slowly, "how many species have you checked so far?" 63 major civilizations, and I'm finding the same patterns in all of them." Her voice was barely above a whisper now. "Every single warrior culture in this galaxy shares musical DNA that shouldn't exist. It's like someone taught them all the same fundamental lessons about combat rhythm and battle coordination." She pulled up another display, this one showing a complex three-dimensional map of the galaxy with trade routes, conquest paths, and cultural exchange networks highlighted in different colors. "Look at this. The Karnath Empire is here. The Vorthak territories are over here, and the Zephyrian hives are on the complete opposite side of the galactic core. Some of these civilizations have never even met, yet their most sacred military traditions are practically identical." A soft chime indicated that one of her deep search algorithms had finished processing. The results appeared in a cascade of data that made both researchers step back in amazement. "Genetic markers," Jiwon breathed, staring at the scrolling information. "I had the archive's bioscanners analyze tissue samples from museum specimens of each species. They've all been influenced by the same genetic modification at some point in their evolutionary history." "Modified how?" Minjun's voice was tight with excitement and fear. "Enhanced vocal cords for complex harmonization, improved auditory processing, for rhythmic coordination, and neurological adaptations that make them naturally responsive to specific musical patterns." Jiwon manipulated the data, highlighting the relevant sections. "Someone or something visited these worlds millions of years ago and deliberately enhanced their ability to create and respond to organized battle songs." The implications hit them both at the same time. Around the archive, the usual sounds of research continued, the whisper of turning pages, the hum of translation devices, the soft conversations of other scholars from across the galaxy. But for Jiwon and Minjun, the universe had suddenly become a much stranger place. "Dr. Park," Minjun said carefully, "if someone was traveling around the galaxy teaching military organization through music, where did they come from? And more importantly," he paused, looking at the overwhelming evidence surrounding them, "where did they go?" Jiwon was already pulling up new search parameters, her fingers flying across the holographic controls. "That's what we need to find out. But first, I want to run one more test." She accessed the archive's historical database, searching for any references to the original source of these military traditions. The search results were frustratingly vague. References to the first teachers, the songbringers, and those who came before appeared in the mythology of dozens of species, but always as half-remembered legends rather than historical fact. "They've been systematically erased from history," Jiwon realized, Every civilization remembers being taught these songs, but none of them remember who did the teaching. A new alert chimed on her display. The archive's pattern recognition system had found something unexpected, a partially corrupted file buried deep in the restricted military archives of the Vorthak Crystal Empire. The access codes were heavily encrypted, but Ji-won's diplomatic credentials gave her the necessary clearance. "What is it?" Min-jun asked, watching as ancient symbols cascaded across the screen. "It's a fragment of something called the Chronicle of First Songs," Ji-won whispered, her translator implant working overtime to decode the archaic Vorthak script. "It mentions a species that traveled from star to star, teaching other races the arts of organized warfare through ritualized combat music. They called themselves—" She paused, checking the translation twice. "The translation is unclear, but it's something like the harmony makers or the song weavers." The file contained more than just text. Audio fragments began playing through the archive's speakers, haunting melodies that seemed familiar yet alien, rhythms that made both humans unconsciously tap their feet, harmonies that stirred something deep in their genetic memory. "Ji-won," Min-jun said softly, "those songs, they sound almost human." She felt a chill run down her spine as she listened to the ancient recordings, the mathematical patterns, the emotional progressions, even the way the harmonies built and resolved. It all felt like something she'd heard before, something that existed at the edge of human memory. "Run a comparative analysis," she commanded the archive systems. "Cross-reference these audio patterns with all available human musical traditions." The quantum processors worked for several minutes, analyzing thousands of songs from Earth's history. When the results appeared, both researchers stared in stunned silence. "Probability of correlation: 87%, the system announced in its neutral voice. "Structural similarities detected in human military cadences, work songs, and ceremonial chants spanning multiple cultures and time periods." Ji-won sank into her chair, the full weight of the discovery hitting her. "Min-jun," she whispered, "I don't think we're looking for aliens who taught other species how to fight." "What do you mean?" She gestured at the overwhelming evidence surrounding them, the musical patterns, the genetic modifications, the systematic erasure from galactic history. "I think we're looking at the scattered remnants of humanity's own forgotten past. These aren't alien songs at all. They're human songs, spread across the galaxy by our own ancestors millions of years ago." The archive fell silent around them. As the implications sank in, every alien species that had laughed at humanity's peaceful nature, every warrior culture that had mocked their lack of military tradition, they were all singing songs that humans had taught them in the distant past. "Should we tell Ambassador Kim?" Min-jun asked finally. Ji-won looked at the vast collection of evidence before them, knowing that this discovery could change everything about humanity's place in the galaxy. "Not yet. We need absolute proof. But if I'm right..." She paused, listening to the ancient human melodies still playing through the archive's speakers. These aliens haven't been worshipping their own warrior ancestors. They've been worshipping ours. The elevator descended for what felt like forever, carrying Dr. Park Ji-won and her assistant Lee Min-jun deeper into the bowels of Nexus Prime than any human had ever gone. The walls gradually changed from polished metal to rough-hewn stone, then to something that looked almost organic, as if they were descending into the belly of some massive creature rather than a space station. "Level -47, the elevator's mechanical voice announced. "Restricted archive vaults. Warning, environmental suits recommended beyond this point." Ji-won checked her portable atmosphere generator one more time. The diplomatic clearance codes she'd managed to obtain were burning a hole in her datapad, and she knew this might be their only chance to access the deepest, most classified sections of the Galactic Archive. The elevator doors opened with a hiss, revealing a corridor that stretched into absolute darkness. Emergency lighting strips along the floor provided just enough illumination to see a few meters ahead. The air tasted stale and metallic, filtered through systems that hadn't been updated in centuries. "Are you sure about this, Dr. Park?" Min-jun whispered, his voice echoing strangely in the empty corridor. The archive director said these vaults haven't been accessed in over 3,000 years. That's exactly why we need to be here, Ji-won replied, activating her handheld scanner. The device's blue glow cast eerie shadows on the walls as they walked deeper into the forgotten depths of the station. If there are answers about the first singers, they'll be in the oldest, most restricted files. Ancient storage crystals lined the walls like glowing eyes, each one containing terabytes of information that predated most current galactic civilizations. Some flickered with failing power, their data slowly degrading after millions of years. Others pulsed with steady light, their quantum matrices still stable and accessible. Robotic sentinel drones floated past them occasionally, their optical sensors scanning the two humans with mechanical curiosity. These weren't the helpful library assistants from the upper levels. These machines were older, more primitive, designed for security rather than service. Their armor plating was scratched and dented from eons of faithful duty in the darkness. Here, Ji-won breathed, stopping in front of a massive storage matrix that towered above them like a crystalline tree. The access panel was covered in symbols she'd seen in her research, not the standard galactic script, but something far older and more complex. She connected her data pad to the ancient interface, watching as her diplomatic codes worked their way through layers of encryption that had been accumulating for millennia. Warning messages flashed across the screen in dozens of dead languages, but her clearance level overrode them one by one. Access granted, the system finally announced, its voice distorted by age and neglect. Warning: this archive contains Class 7 restricted material. Unauthorized access is punishable by immediate termination. The holographic display that materialized was unlike anything they'd seen in the upper archives. Instead of neat, organized files, this was raw data. Unfiltered historical records, genetic samples, star charts, and multimedia files that hadn't been cleaned up or edited for public consumption. "Look at this," Ji-won whispered, manipulating the display with trembling hands. A three-dimensional star map appeared, showing the galaxy as it existed millions of years ago. Trade routes, territorial boundaries, and civilization markers glowed in different colors. But one pattern dominated everything else. Bright golden lines traced paths between star systems, connecting worlds that had never been linked by any known species. The lines formed an intricate web that covered nearly half the galaxy, with each connection point marked by the same mysterious symbol. "The first singers," Min-jun read from the ancient text floating beside the map. "Origin, unknown. Duration of activity, approximately 2 million standard years. Purpose, enhancement and education of developing warrior cultures through musical combat training." Ji-won zoomed in on one of the golden pathways, watching as detailed records appeared. They visited Carnith Prime 4.7 million years ago, Vorthak's crystal homeworld 3.2 million years ago, the Zephyrian hive world. My God, they were everywhere. The records showed the same pattern on every world. The mysterious first singers would arrive, establish contact with the dominant species, and spend decades or even centuries teaching them organized warfare through ritualized combat music. Then they would move on, leaving behind genetically enhanced populations with improved vocal abilities and natural responses to rhythmic coordination. But who were they? Min-jun asked, scrolling through file after file of encounter reports. A record describes them as visiting teachers or harmony masters, but there are no physical descriptions, no genetic samples, no— Wait, Ji-won interrupted, her scanner detecting something deeper in the storage matrix. "There's another level of files here, something that requires even higher clearance." She input her diplomatic codes again, but this time the system hesitated. Ancient security protocols kicked in, scanning their biometric data with sensors that had been dormant for eons. Red warning lights began flashing throughout the corridor as the archive's deepest defenses activated. "Genetic scan initiated," the system announced, comparing biological markers to archived first singer samples. Both humans held their breath as invisible scanners analyzed their DNA, comparing it to genetic fragments stored in the archive's most protected vaults. The process seemed to take forever, with status indicators crawling across the display at an agonizingly slow pace. "Scan complete," the system finally announced. Genetic compatibility confirmed. Access granted to level. Omega files. New holograms burst into existence around them, showing data that made everything they'd discovered so far seem like children's toys. These weren't just historical records, they were personal logs, private communications, and detailed biological studies that revealed the truth about the first singer's origins. "Look at these genetic samples," G1 gasped, manipulating the molecular models floating before them. They collected DNA from every species they visited, but these base sequences, Minjun, these aren't alien at all. The protein structures, the genetic markers, even the evolutionary adaptations were all variations on a theme they recognized. As the archive's quantum processors ran comparison algorithms, the truth became undeniable. Probability of genetic relation to Homo sapiens, 97.3%, the system announced in its emotionless voice. Both researchers stared at the results in stunned silence. The golden pathways on the star map suddenly took on new meaning, not the travels of alien teachers, but the scattered journeys of humanity's own forgotten ancestors. "The first singers weren't aliens," G1 whispered, her voice barely audible in the vast chamber. "They were human, ancient humans, who spread across the galaxy millions of years ago, teaching other species the arts of organized warfare through music." Minjun was scrolling through personal logs now, reading accounts written in languages that were clearly precursors to modern human speech. Listen to this entry. "The Karnath youth learn quickly. Their natural aggression, when channeled, through our battle songs creates fearsome warriors. We have given them the gift of coordination, of fighting as one voice. They will remember these lessons long after we are gone." More files opened automatically as the archive recognized their genetic signatures. Ship logs showing human vessels traveling between star systems, medical records detailing the genetic enhancements they performed on other species, cultural reports describing how they adapted their teaching methods for different alien psychologies. They were explorers, Jiwon realized, watching video logs of ancient humans working alongside primitive Vorthak and Karnath. Our ancestors spread across the galaxy, not as conquerors but as teachers. They found intelligent species and helped them develop into the warrior cultures we know today. The final piece of the puzzle appeared as a massive holographic display, a detailed map showing the first singer's ultimate fate. The golden pathways gradually faded and disappeared, converging on a single point at the galaxy's edge. "They went home," Minjun said softly. "After millions of years of teaching, they returned to their origin point, but the coordinates..." He paused, checking the stellar navigation data. "This is Sol system. This is Earth." Jiwon felt the universe shift around her as the full implications hit home. Every alien species that had mocked humanity's peaceful nature, every warrior culture that had laughed at their lack of military tradition, they were all using songs and techniques that humans had taught them in the distant past. "We didn't forget how to be warriors," she whispered, staring at the evidence surrounding them. "We chose to become something else, but the galaxy kept singing our songs, generation after generation, not knowing they were honoring the memory of teachers who had returned home to evolve beyond the need for conquest." The archive fell silent around them, its ancient secrets finally revealed. In the darkness of the deepest vaults, two humans had discovered that their species wasn't the galaxy's newest member. They were its oldest teachers, returning after millions of years to find their students had become masters of the very arts they had once shared. Above them, the diplomatic humiliation continued, unaware that everything was about to change. The Grand Colosseum of Nexus Prime was a marvel of ancient engineering, built into the heart of the massive space station like a crystalline cathedral. Its transparent walls offered a breathtaking view of the star-filled void outside, while energy shields kept the atmosphere contained. The arena floor was made of polished stone that had witnessed thousands of years of diplomatic ceremonies, ritual combats, and cultural exchanges. Today, however, the Colosseum was packed beyond capacity. Alien spectators filled every available seat, with overflow crowds watching from floating platforms suspended throughout the vast space. The excited chatter of hundreds of different species created a symphony of clicks, hisses, growls, and harmonics that would have been overwhelming without the station's advanced translation systems. Colonel Song Hyunwoo stood alone in the center of the arena, his simple black military uniform a stark contrast to the ornate surroundings. At 42 years old, he was a career soldier who had seen action in Earth's last territorial conflicts, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. Around him, holographic displays showed his vital signs to the crowd, heart rate elevated, but steady, breathing controlled, showing no signs of the fear that alien spectators expected from their soft mammal opponents. War Chief Vorthak loomed over him like a living mountain of crystal and light. The massive Vorthak warrior stood nearly 4 meters tall, his transparent body refracting the arena's lights into dazzling rainbow patterns. Battle scars etched his crystalline surface, each one a story of conquest, each crack a testament to survived combat. His voice, when it boomed through the Colosseum's speakers, sounded like breaking glass mixed with distant thunder. "Citizens of the galaxy!" Vorthak's words echoed off the arena walls, amplified by both technology and natural acoustics. "We gather today to witness the pathetic display of a species that dares call itself civilized without proving its worth. In combat," the crowd roared its approval, a sound that shook the very foundations of the station. Karnith delegates slapped their powerful tails against the metal floors in rhythmic approval, while Zephyrian spectators clicked their mandibles in perfect unison. Even the normally stoic, silicon-based Rockin delegates showed their excitement by shifting their massive forms, creating small avalanches of pebbles that cascaded down the arena walls. In the diplomatic viewing box, Ambassador Kim Min-ho gripped the railing with white knuckles. The formal challenge had been issued just 6 hours ago, following humanity's humiliating rejection by the Galactic Council. According to ancient tradition, any species questioning the Council's decision could demand a trial by combat, though none had been foolish enough to try in over 3 centuries. "Sir," Dr. Park Ji-won whispered urgently beside him, her datapad glowing with the information she'd discovered in the archive's deepest vaults. "You need to tell Colonel Song what we found. This changes everything." Kim's eyes widened as Ji-won rapidly shared her discoveries, the genetic evidence, the historical records, the truth about the first singers. But before he could relay the information to the arena floor, War Chief Vorthak raised his massive crystalline arms for silence. "Behold the songless humans." Vorthak's voice dripped with contempt. "A species so weak they know nothing of warrior traditions, nothing of battle music, nothing of the sacred arts that separate civilized beings from mere animals. Tell us, little human, where are your war songs? Where are your battle chants? What pathetic noise do your people make when they pretend to be soldiers?" The arena fell silent except for scattered laughter from the alien spectators. All eyes focused on Colonel Song, who stood motionless in the center of the vast space. The holographic displays showed his heart rate dropping, his breathing becoming deeper and more controlled, not the reaction of a terrified human, but of a warrior preparing for battle. Song raised his hand and something extraordinary happened. The massive Colosseum, filled with thousands of chattering aliens from dozens of species, fell completely silent. It was as if the very air itself was holding its breath, waiting for what would come next. "You want to hear our songs?" Song's voice, carried clearly through the arena without electronic amplification, trained by years of commanding troops in combat situations. "You want to know what humans sing when we march to war?" He took a deep breath and began with the simple cadence his grandfather had taught him during childhood visits, a rhythm passed down through generations of Korean soldiers, refined in the crucible of countless conflicts. Left, 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 right, left. His voice was deep and strong, echoing off the arena's crystalline walls. "Sound off!" The response came not from the crowd, but from something deeper, a genetic memory that stirred in every alien present. The Karneth delegates found themselves swaying slightly to the rhythm. The Vorthak began to resonate at frequencies that matched Song's voice, their crystalline bodies creating harmonics that hadn't been heard in millions of years. "1, 2, Song continued, his voice growing stronger with each word. But then something changed. The simple military cadence began to evolve, incorporating elements that seemed to come from somewhere beyond conscious memory. In the diplomatic box, Ambassador Kim felt something primal awakening within him. The rhythm was familiar, yet alien. Ancient, yet immediate. Without conscious thought, he found himself standing and adding his voice to songs, his diplomatic training forgotten in the face of something far more fundamental. We are the ones who remember. Song's voice had transformed from a simple military chant into something that seemed to shake the very foundations of reality. We are the ones who taught the stars to sing. Dr. Park Ji-won gasped as she recognized the patterns from her research, not just in Song's voice but in the way the alien spectators were beginning to respond. Lee Min-jun joined his voice to the growing chorus, followed by every human in the Colosseum. Their voices merged and harmonized, creating rhythms and progressions that seemed to bypass the conscious mind and speak directly to something embedded. In the very structure of galactic civilization, the effect on the alien audience was immediate and profound. War Chief Vorthak staggered backward, his massive crystalline form resonating like a struck bell. The sound that emerged from his body was hauntingly beautiful, a harmonic that complemented the human voices perfectly, as if it had been designed specifically for that purpose. Throughout the arena, similar transformations were occurring. The reptilian Karneth found themselves hissing in complex patterns that matched the human rhythm perfectly. The insectoid Zephyrian's mandible clicking evolved into intricate percussion that provided a foundation for the growing musical complexity. Even the normally silent Rockin delegates began to produce deep, thrumming tones that vibrated through the station's hull. Impossible, War Chief Vorthak whispered, his voice lost in the growing symphony. But his body betrayed his words, swaying to rhythms that seemed encoded in his very molecular structure. The human voices continued to build, not through volume, but through complexity. Ancient harmonies emerged, not taught, but remembered at the genetic level. The simple Korean military cadence had awakened something that had been sleeping in the galactic consciousness for millions of years. Song's voice soared above the growing chorus. We walked among the stars when worlds were young. We taught the sacred arts of war and song. We gave you harmony, we gave you strength, we gave you everything you are. The arena erupted in sound, not the chaotic noise of before, but a perfectly coordinated symphony involving every species present. Aliens who had spent millennia as enemies found themselves singing in harmony, their voices blending in ways that should have been impossible, and at the center of it all stood Colonel Song Hyun-woo, no longer just a human soldier, but the inheritor of a legacy that spanned the galaxy and millions of years of forgotten history. The challenge had been accepted, but not in any way the aliens had expected. The moment Colonel Song's voice reached its crescendo, the entire Colosseum began to vibrate, with a frequency that seemed to resonate through the very atoms of the space station. The transparent walls of the arena glowed with an inner light as harmonic waves spread outward like ripples in a cosmic pond. Every alien present felt something awakening deep within their genetic memory, something that had been sleeping for millions of years. War Chief Vorthak's massive crystalline body started to sing on its own, producing pure tones that perfectly complemented the human voices. The battle scars etched into his transparent form began to glow with soft light, each crack telling a story that suddenly made perfect sense. His knees buckled as ancient memories flooded back, not his own memories, but those embedded in his very DNA. The harmony makers, he whispered, his voice barely audible above the growing symphony. The first singers have returned. Throughout the Colosseum, an incredible transformation was taking place. The reptilian Karneth delegates found their natural hissing evolving into complex rhythmic patterns that their ancestors had used in battles fought long before recorded history. Their powerful tails struck the arena floor in perfect synchronization, creating a thunderous percussion that provided the foundation for something far greater than any of them had imagined possible. Commander Saleth of the Karneth battle fleet rose from his seat, his scarred hide gleaming under the arena lights. By the ancient scales, he breathed, this is the lost rhythm of the First War. We learned it as hatchlings, but never knew its true origin. The insectoid Zephyrians were experiencing their own awakening. Their mandibles, which normally clicked in simple communication patterns, began producing intricate melodies that wove through the human voices like golden threads through a tapestry. Queen Zithara of the Third Hive felt her compound eyes well. With moisture as forgotten melodies filled her consciousness. "The drone song of unity," she whispered to her attendants. "Our larvae sing it instinctively, but we never understood why. Now I know. It was taught to us by the first teachers. Even the normally stoic silicon-based Rockin delegates were affected. Their massive forms began to produce deep, thrumming tones that vibrated through the station's hull. These sounds were felt rather than heard, creating a foundation of rhythm that seemed to connect every living being in the Colosseum to the planet-sized hearts of their ancestral worlds. In the diplomatic viewing box, Ambassador Kim Min-ho felt tears streaming down his face as he added his voice to the growing chorus. Dr. Park Ji-won stood beside him, her scientific mind struggling to process what her heart already knew to be true. The genetic evidence from the archives had been just the beginning. This was proof that transcended any laboratory analysis. Elder Tharion, the oldest member of the Vorthak Council, struggled to his feet with movements that betrayed his incredible age. His crystalline form was cloudier than the others, marked by countless eons of accumulated wisdom and memory. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of geological time. "The song of first dawn," he said, his words echoing through the suddenly hushed arena. "I have lived for 12,000 years, and I remember the fragments my elders taught me. But these humans, they know the complete verses. They sing the words that were lost when the great teachers departed." Colonel Song's voice transformed as he continued the ancient chant, switching seamlessly between Korean military cadences and something far older, words in a language that had evolved into dozens of alien tongues over millions of years. The B. Translation systems throughout the Colosseum struggled to keep up, but the meaning was clear to every being present. "We walked among young worlds when stars were being born." Song's voice carried to every corner of the vast space. "We shared the gift of organized battle, the sacred art of fighting as one. We gave you rhythm. We gave you strength. We gave you the songs that would carry you through the dark times when we were gone." The revelation hit the assembled delegates like a physical force. These weren't primitive mammals begging for acceptance. They were the return of legends made flesh, the fulfillment of prophecies that every galactic civilization had whispered for millennia. War Chief Vorthak, the mightiest warrior in the known galaxy, dropped to one knee before the human colonel. His massive crystalline form was trembling like a struck bell, producing harmonics that had never been heard since the age of the first singers. "Forgive us," he whispered, his proud voice broken with emotion. "We did not recognize our own teachers. We mocked the very beings who gave us everything we are." Throughout the arena, similar scenes were playing out. Alien warriors who had spent lifetimes proving their strength in battle were kneeling before the humans, not in defeat, but in recognition of a truth that had been hidden in their genetic memory for millions of years. Ambassador Kim stepped forward from the diplomatic box, his voice carrying clearly through the Colosseum's advanced acoustics. The simple Korean diplomat had been transformed by the moment, standing with the bearing of someone who had just discovered his true heritage. "We did not come as conquerors," he said, his words translated into hundreds of languages simultaneously. "We came home to find our children grown strong and proud. The galaxy has flourished in our absence, and we are honored to see what you have become." The council speaker, Crystalis, rose slowly from his ceremonial throne. His ancient staff trembled in his grasp as he struggled to find words for a moment that no galactic protocol had ever prepared him for. "Humanity will not merely be accepted into the Galactic Council," he announced, his voice cracking with emotion. "You will take your rightful place as the first among us. The teachers return to guide us once more. Will you—" He paused, the weight of millions of years of forgotten history heavy in his words. "Will you help us remember the songs we have lost?" Colonel Song's expression softened as he looked around the Colosseum at the thousands of alien faces watching him with a mixture of awe, reverence, and desperate hope. He began another chant, this one gentler, a melody that spoke of unity, cooperation, and the unbreakable bonds between teacher and student that could span the cosmos and survive the passage of eons. The aliens listened with the reverence usually reserved for the most sacred ceremonies. Their voices joined the human song tentatively at first, then with growing confidence, as ancient memories guided their vocal cords. The Colosseum filled with a harmony that hadn't been heard since the first singers had departed the galaxy millions of years ago. Above them, through the transparent walls of the arena, the stars themselves seemed to pulse in rhythm with the music. The cosmic dance that had begun when humanity first ventured into space was finally complete. The laughter had stopped. The mockery was over. The children of the galaxy had finally recognized their teachers, and the first singers had come home. The end.